The formation of the Community Benefit Society followed a huge public campaign to save these historic works from redevelopment. Over 500 people bought shares in it, and dozens more continue to volunteer their time and skills to this day to make sure that the fabric of these wonderful buildings is preserved and maintained for future generations. Nowhere else in the world can claim this unique heritage which the place represents in the manufacture and commercial success of cutlery from stainless steel, first made here by Harry Brearley. But also, we now have a thriving, vibrant workplace for more than 30 makers, craftspeople, artists and others who make a living here, thanks to all that effort. There's a lot to learn from what we've done here in Sheffield, and this film will help you to understand how it was achieved and how we're facing the future with confidence. I'm Derek Morton. I am a volunteer here, and I used to be on the board of directors and the chair for quite a few years. I came across Portland Works in 2009, a very murky December afternoon. It was a shocking experience really, seeing this building, because it was like going back 100 years. But with 100 years of decay built onto it. So it was pouring with rain, there was water everywhere, the yard was flooded, the place everywhere was damp, but there was this energy about the place which I was just knocked over by. And the whole thing turned out to be threatened by development. A local businessman owned the place, he was seeking planning permission to convert the building into about 80 flats. Nobody who worked here would have a chance of continuing to work here. There'd be very little chance of a lot of them finding other places. I wrote a letter to the Sheffield Telegraph, because that's what you do. And I said, if there's a campaign going, I want to be part of it. The campaign group got going really nicely. Quite a few tenants on board. There were about 20 of us, people from the community. Anybody who heard about it just seemed to sort of drift in, come to a meeting or two, and quite often stayed for more. After about 6 months of discussion, we realised that rather than fighting a planning application, we ought to be trying to buy the place, because you can fight planning applications, they keep popping back up again, and sooner or later you lose. So we looked at all the options, and we decided on what's called a Community Benefit Society. I think it was still called an Industrial and Providence Society then. So what is a Community Benefit Society? A Community Benefit Society was created in Victorian times as industrial and providence societies, as a way of regulating cooperative ventures so that people could have some trust in them, so they put their money into a cooperative venture and they know it would be safe. A Community Benefit Society allows you to raise share capital, but not with tradable shares. They're fixed price shares, often with zero interest, and you can't sell them on to anyone. It looks like a company, it's got a board of directors, so there's a chair and there's a treasurer and a secretary and so on. We started off with a target of 750,000, which is completely unrealistic, but it looked like the sort of money that the guy was after. We eventually bought the place for about half that, so we raised just short of £500,000, 250,000 from the shares, and the rest in loans. We were fundraising for 2 years. We ended up with over 500 shareholders, of which the great majority bought the minimum shareholding of £100. So about 400 people putting in £100. If you do your maths, that only adds up to about 40,000. The other 100 people put in the other £100,000. So, you know, the average shareholding was around about £500. And we eventually bought the building on the last day of February in 2013. Really, three and a bit years from when we first started campaigning. The day we bought the building, we were ecstatic. With euphoria. It was just great, you know, we finally achieved it. And then the day after, we kind of woke up and realised we now had to run the building and stop it falling down. And I had to literally stop it falling down, because over the previous few weeks we'd done some detailed survey work with a builder and identified two major problems. One of the pillars supporting the building at the back of the yard was cracked vertically down the length of it, and the facade over the street entrance was actually detached from the main building by about 2.5 inches of clear space, nothing holding the facade, which is quite substantial, onto the rest of the building. We set up a charity about 18 months, 2 years into ownership, which charity was a fundraising body, the Friends of Portland Works, which is really just half a dozen people. They've been brilliant. I couldn't put a precise figure on what they've raised, but it must be around about 150,000. We've had quite a few challenges over the years. I think the primary one was energy. There were so many people helping, you couldn't let them down, you know, and they were putting the work in as well. So that energy thing is really important, and getting breaks, you know, like a good press, you know, article or a nice telly, or you know, somebody says something nice on the radio, or even just somebody walking through the door and saying, I really like what you're doing, can I put some money into it? Oh yes, please. You know, it's interesting looking at the place now, because in many ways it's not that different from what was here in 2009. It's an awful lot tidier. The building is drier, and it looks a lot smarter, but we didn't want it ever to look too smart. But we've got a nice balance between the people that have always been here, and there's about a dozen of those tenants are doing the kind of more traditional stuff. And then we've managed to branch out as well with gin making and modern jewellery with Baileys, and I think the key to it is that we've set our rent levels quite low. So demand is good, but yeah, we have a nice relationship with people. Some of them just drop in and have a chat, and that's lovely, you know. And I think there's 500 people in and around Sheffield who own a bit of Portland Works, and it's a great feeling owning a bit of this building. You know, I always just smile when I come through that archway. It just feels good.
My name is Julia Udall. I'm a senior lecturer in architecture at Sheffield Hallam University, and I had a number of roles at Portland Works, including director. So I first heard of Portland Works as a student when I was at Sheffield University, and we were invited by Colin Havard, who was the director of the local forum, to come and develop a project around this John Street area. We were invited to kind of look at what the future of this place might be as an area of work that was important for the neighbourhood of Sharrow. And I think what was really important about that kind of work was bringing together the kind of architectural fabric of the area. The place is a kind of important place of employment, especially for the little masters and craftspeople and artists and musicians, but also it's kind of wider value for the neighbourhood and kind of community life. It was quite a shock to hear that the works were at risk and this really kind of valuable place for the neighbourhood would be lost. And so it became really important to kind of raise awareness of this, because most people didn't really seem to know that much about it. So each week we had meetings where tenants would come and talk about their businesses, the way they worked, and what it would mean to lose this really important place. One of the kind of key things to realise was that they couldn't necessarily relocate easily to other places within the city. So for many it would be the kind of end of their businesses. I've been working at Sharrow Community Forum developing a project called Distinctive Sharrow, which was about kind of roots up community neighbourhood planning. And through that kind of process, we'd already kind of formed relationships with various kind of planners, people within the council, councillors, but also kind of cultural and community organisations within the neighbourhood. So this gave me an opportunity to go to a lot of those people and talk to them about Portland Works and its value. One of the other things that was really kind of crucial was understanding it wasn't just this kind of individual building, but actually there was an ecology of businesses that all worked together, that depended on one another within the kind of wider area. So if we lost this place, lots of other things would go as well. I worked in a number of ways to kind of set up tools that would support the campaign. So this included kind of exhibitions with artists at galleries within the city where we invited local councillors or MPs. It also included working with students to do kind of very detailed surveys of the local area, understanding the businesses, their needs and how they worked, but also crucially how they connected together. This was really instrumental actually in opposing the planning application. One of the arguments the developer had made was that this place was near derelict, it had no value for the neighbourhood, and actually converting into flats would be an act of regeneration. Instead, we actually saw that it would be a loss of so many kind of businesses and particularly really high-skilled jobs that were really valuable. The support came politically across the board, so we had local councillors from both Labour and the Green Party very keen to support us. They were attending meetings regularly. We had the local MPs supporting us. We had all sorts of support from within the universities, so I had contacts at both Sheffield Hallam and Sheffield University, and they got involved in terms of the planning department, the architecture department, the English department with their Storying Sheffield project. I think the artists and musicians helped put on events, they helped kind of create CDs and kind of all sorts of things that were really kind of important to kind of raising the profile of the campaign. A key moment in the campaign was the knowledge transfer workshop, which was some funding that we got from Sheffield University that allowed us to gather people together to talk about the kind of forms of ownership, management, organisation that we wanted. This was an opportunity for us to bring together people who had experience of different forms of business, together with people who knew about kind of heritage buildings, together with the tenants. And this was an opportunity for us to kind of talk together about what was important at Portland Works, how the building worked and what might happen in the future.
I'm Nikki Wilson.
And I'm Steve Connolly.
We first got involved we'd moved into Nether Edge area a couple of years before. We've always done voluntary work in some capacity, and we contacted Sharrow Community Forum and got introduced to this building. We knew at that point that the owner had applied for planning consent to turn it into student flats, and that the tenants here, with all their special skills and techniques, that they were likely to be evicted. It started off, how could we oppose the planning application? And then it sort of developed a bit more into, well, what can we do beyond that? It isn't just about trying to stop something from happening, but how can we make things better? What proposal can we come up with? We did a lot of publicity around the planning application and got a petition out and got people to sign that. And then also, I think before the planning application was decided, we got permission to have an open day in the building with the tenants in their workshops. And actually the interest that came from that, we realised there was a community of people out there in Sheffield who actually really care about the industrial history of the city, about buildings like this one, which they saw as quite sort of unique and special. And so that sort of galvanised us and gave us a bit more surety about our campaign, that we were heading in the right direction. And so from that evolved this idea that we would buy the building from the owner.
So there was that whole process of looking at different models, what could we do, how might this work, and that kind of thing. So the decision to do a community benefit society came after another several months, and we must have been ready to put our own money into it from the beginning, because we must have seen this as a model that was the right model. And it would have been really weird for us to have kind of said, hey, we think this is a really good idea, and then we're not actually putting any money into it. And so committing our money, I suppose we believed in it, and we thought it was worth supporting. We knew that the story we had read was of a young couple, brother and sister, who had raised 800 and something thousand in a similar kind of way, just from people across the country. So we knew it was doable.
I was a community development worker by profession, so I knew the bare bones of it, and in the beginning I knew a little bit about grant funding for voluntary and community organisations, so that was very useful in terms of sort of tapping into, in the beginning, just small grants, you know, £5,000, £8,000, and again it was that knowledge of where to go to get those small grants that was actually really useful.
Over a 5-year period she missed one monthly meeting out of 60. To some extent, yes, it did take over our lives. So again, yes, after we bought it, remained a director, so meetings every couple of weeks. We are, as you probably gather, we're a married couple, so this was a lot of our home life. Yeah, there's quite a lot of discussion of Portland Works around the dinner table, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I've done that before in the voluntary capacity. Never been a community development worker like Nikki. I've been a volunteer in management of voluntary organisations, so again, that kind of familiarity. So I think we did bring particular skills, but we were by no means kind of unique in that. And I think that is one of the things that really enabled this to work, was that astonishing range of experience and enthusiasms for the project. It's definitely a social investment. It's actually built into the structure which allowed us to do a community share interest, that people should not be investing in order to get the financial return. So there's an expectation that you'll get your money back, but there's no expectation of profit on top of that.
And now, yes, I'm happy. I feel my money is well invested, and I think as a democratic organisation it continues to achieve some pretty amazing things.
I'm Andy Cole, and I've been at Portland Works for 45 years, doing light hand tools.
My name's Mark Jackson. I came to Portland Works in 2006. I make a design of coat peg for primary schools that's it's got a different configuration from the usual pegs that are just stuck on the wall. They're brought off the wall and turned sideways so that the coats hang back to back and face to face with each other, so they actually stay put when you hang them up.
I'm Mary Sewell, and I'm an artist here at Portland Works, and I have a studio in the Lantern Room, which is a beautiful, airy, light studio space which is perfect for artists.
What I like about Portland Works is one big happy family. We all help each other. I'm just so passionate about the place. It's me, it's part of me sort of thing.
I came here quite a long time ago, and it was a lot more run down than it is these days. Gradually it started being done up, and it's got better and better, and I moved into the space that I'm in now.
Yeah, there's a good community spirit among the tenants. I think everyone's glad to be here. There's a buzz about the place, and it's a lot to do with the shared experience.
When the original threat of losing the works reacted, I was very angry because I can't just move anywhere. My business wouldn't exist because I can't just move anywhere and get hammer rights. Hammer rights are where you've got the right to make noise at a certain level and nobody around you can complain. It was very stressful at the time, because you've been here all that time, and you're trying to keep a living, and somebody just wanted to turn it into bedsits, and no. And when I saw the plans, all the forge and all the centre was disappearing. It was going to be a lift shaft. Some of my machinery is still from the 1870s, and the line shaft's still in the roof of the forge that used to run them when it was the steam engine.
I think you couldn't help but get involved when the works were under threat, because everybody was under threat. I mean, as a tenant, everybody was under threat of having to leave, and our space, which is quite a it's a big space for a studio, but for 2 flats it's a small space, so everybody wanted to save it. It's an old building, it's got huge amounts of character, and everybody wanted to pull in and save it.
All the people that have got involved, it's marvellous, to save such a beautiful building it just needs saving.
For me, it was important to be involved in it because there was already a sort of community feeling amongst the tenants in the works. We were kind of excited about the prospect of something bigger and a secure future for the works. It was a nice thing to, to feel involved in sharing.
I think a lot of good stuff has been developed here, building-wise and sort of education-wise. For instance, this space is fantastic. We're in Maker's Space now. I had an exhibition here last year, beautiful space to show works in, and it's used, I think the theatre company is using it now.
It's been my life, and I love the building. I've seen characters come and go, different people, and it's just been my life. I just love the building.
I'm Chris Cooper, and I've been volunteering here at Portland Works since a little while before I retired in 2012.
My name's Bill Gray. I'm also a volunteer, and I've been coming about the same time as Chris. I think we started about the same time.
We volunteer mostly in the matter of building repair and restoration. The building was extraordinarily dilapidated, and the first job that I got involved with really was the repair and partial rebuilding of the stonework over the archway. This was while I was still at work, and that was quite nice because it gave me a good introduction into what we faced in the future. Over the first few years, a lot of the work has been making the various different buildings wind and watertight, because a good roof means a reasonably good building beneath straight away.
I've had to take a lead role basically because the people that were coming were so enthusiastic but lacked the practical skills that we needed here. So it's not only been the work, we've had an educational programme where we've been teaching the newcomers and the volunteers to do skills.
Most of the tenants have been really, I would say, extremely supportive in what we've been trying to do.
There was a lot of scepticism in the early days from tenants about these old guys coming and starting to get involved in doing the building up. But I think we've gained the confidence of them over the early years that our interest is their interest. If they've got water pouring in their unit, they want somebody to repair it, and we're the guys that's going to do it. So we started to get this rapport where by working with them working with us, we were able to achieve some of these jobs to mutual benefit, really. We've got over most of the major waterproofing work, and we've also been able to increase the tenancy of the building by releasing additional rooms that have been in state of disrepair. We've just completed the top of the chimney, which was becoming a problem. We got bricks falling 60 foot from the top of the chimney, and that had to be done. So that's primarily nearly all been done by volunteer work. To bring subcontractors in to do that would have cost the works
Thousands. Yeah.
Thousands. The enthusiasm from the volunteers was great. And when we planned it, we decided, and everybody was briefed on what we were going to do, they were just into it, and it just worked like a treat. Half a day, the concrete was up there, it was laid, we'd trowelled it off, the job was done.
Camaraderie, that's what it's all about down here.
My name's Stella Howe, and I'm the Education and Outreach Officer here at Portland Works, and my role is to reach out into the community. I run lots of different events and manage the educational offer of Portland Works. The offer is to engage people in the building and learning about the building and what's happened here in the past, but also giving people the opportunity of using the building. So for example, students from the university, adults for adult learning, and also we're hoping to engage more younger children here. So what I've done is I've run an open day in May, I run an open day in September linked to Heritage Open Days, and I have also run a Christmas market, which was a very new thing, never done anything like that before. But the purpose of that was to showcase the work of our tenants, because we have a huge range of different artisans and makers and craftspeople, and I wanted them to have the opportunity to showcase what they make and for the public to come and see those things. It's very difficult in Sheffield to let people know about Portland Works because we're not part of the formal museum offer. We're a separate little entity on our own. So one of the things that I've been doing is running heritage lectures. So in this space, which people love to come in the evening and have a speaker. I think it's very important because I want people to know about those things and to learn about them and for them not to be forgotten. And that's particularly important for young people. We shall keep the outreach work going. We shall continue with our events, open days. We'll continue with our heritage lectures, and we're also going to develop some workshops with our tenant artists. So they will be running. We'll also be making our links back with schools again, so that young people from the specialist school in Sheffield will be coming and working with tenants on work experience. Very soon this space that we're sat in, the wonderful maker space that used to be the polishing and burnishing room in the Mosley factory, is going to be a place for performance and theatre. So Only Lucky Dogs and some other Sheffield artists and performers have put on a programme which is going to showcase their works, their new works, and that's an exciting range of things that many young people are going to be bringing to the works, and hopefully bringing new audiences to Portland Works, not just to this space, but to engage with the works and what it offers.
My name's Anna Delange and I'm the historian here. I started at Portland Works, I suppose, round about 8 or 9 years ago, when it was before we bought it.
I'm Peter Delange. My background's in building conservation. When we moved to Sheffield in 2012, I became interested along with Anna in Portland Works and became a shareholder.
My name's Dr. Chris Corker. I'm current chair of Portland Works, and in my day job I'm a business historian and lecturer in management. Portland Works here is important to the wider world because this is where the idea of stainless steel consumer goods began. So Portland Works is part of a network of cutlery works and steel works in Sheffield around about the First World War. You have a range of companies that are one-man artisans, people running cutlery works like we have right here, all the way up to your largest steelworks out of the East End of Sheffield.
Harry Brearley came here with his very first attempts at stainless steel, and he brought it to Mosley. Robert Mosley started in Sheffield as a young lad, and he became a cutler, and it was just at that beginning time when cutlery really got started. And he just grew, and he moved from one works to another works, but he worked and made it, and made successful stainless steel for the first time in the world here. It was a revolutionary development.
Because Brearley was born in Sheffield, he knew of cutlers as well as the big steelworks and thought there's a market for steel that doesn't stain. And he knew a guy called Ernest Stewart who worked here, who was a works metallurgist, and he knew him from school. They were school colleagues. So Harry Brearley comes here with this sample of stainless steel, as we would now call it. And this is the place where the first stainless steel knives in the entire world were ever made. This is where that consumer revolution of stainless steel goods began. And it's really those connections between people and places that are important to a place like Portland Works. The idea of stainless steel consumer goods takes off very quickly. Portland Works, run by a company called Mosley, start making stainless steel knives in 1914. Stainless steel was invented in 1913. And by 1915, they're exporting stainless steel cutlery all the way to Australia. As people start realizing that this is actually useful, you don't have to polish your knives and forks anymore. You have this good that is, sustainable. It's saving a job. It very quickly goes into things like plated goods, into sinks, into just everyday items that used to stain and be made of steel. In many ways, it revolutionized the home. You don't have to have all these extra bits of work anymore.
The importance of Portland Works lies in not just in its being the first place on the planet that stainless steel was turned into something useful, but also as an example of Sheffield cutlery trade and manufacture. So much has been lost in Sheffield. This is still basically an original late Victorian cutlery works, slightly repurposed. We have 2 knife makers here, we've got artists, we've got musicians, we've got a leather worker, but essentially
we've got a forge.
It is still doing the job of turning out craftsmanship-made articles, and it was the craftsmanship in Sheffield cutlery that really stood out worldwide and earned its reputation.
A place like Portland Works is doing every stage of the process of making a finished knife. They are bringing the steel in, they are forging it, they are making it into the blanks. People are then grinding them, polishing them, packaging them. People at different levels of this works, we're across 3 different levels, all working on different parts of that process from the beginning to the end and then distributing to the wider world. And places like this were an employment draw for the local community. You know, outside here on Hill Street and Randall Street now are shops and commercial buildings, but this was all terraced houses. And generally local works like this would attract people to work in places like this. Young children from age 8 upwards, men and women working at all different stages of the process. Men generally in the grinding stages, women in the polishing and packaging and then moving the things out of the works as well.
There is absolutely a wow factor to getting the cutlery out and showing people things that they didn't realise were special and that their granny might have at home somewhere. And they all go home and they have a look again at that box that Granny's got and see if it says Robert Mosley inside it. And you never know, it might do.
This building has been involved in manufacturing and producing knives and steel products for 140 years. Portland Works is about making stuff, and that connection to the past is really important, but also we are embracing the present and the future in terms of what manufacturing means in Sheffield. We have digital companies here as well as traditional handicrafts. To me, history and heritage is at the core of what Portland Works is all about. Not just embracing the history that we have here, but also thinking about the history we're going to make here. Getting people interested in what we're doing for the future. We're investing in startups, we're investing in digital media, we're investing in people learning those traditional crafts so they don't die away as well. And we also have people like theatre directors on the board of directors now. This room where we're in is going to become a theatre in the very near future. The takeaway message from Portland Works in terms of how you can take a heritage building that's potentially declining or going to be sold to developers is really that you can do it, but you need a strength of people. You need community to come together and say, no, that is important to us. It's very easy to walk past buildings like this. You know, there are dozens of them across Sheffield. And you look at it and you go, oh, it's a shame that disappeared. A place like Portland Works was really a case of that is going to disappear and it's important, so what do we do about it?
Understand what you're dealing with, understand its significance, its context, its history. Don't do more than you need to do. Don't add to it unless you need to economically. We are making changes, subdividing units to make it economic, but we're not doing unnecessary work. We're not, please, going to put the chimney back to its full height because its loss of chimney is part of its history. And thirdly, when you do work, do it properly. Do the minimum you require, understand what you're dealing with, use the right materials, use the right techniques, use, if you can, the right craftsmanship.
I think what I would want people to learn is that there are some buildings that look so insignificant, but actually are a very major part of the way we live today.